every bit of that. Okay, now there is another case, and Ping, our good buddy Ping, with Nights with Ping, has been following this case, and it is the case of this teenager, and her name is Phoebe. Hold on, where did it go?
Bishop.
Phoebe Bishop, thank you. And basically what the deal was, she was going to go catch a plane, just like we all do. And there's this road called Airport Drive. And this is where you drive up and you drop people off, and then they walk to the terminal, and then they go inside and blah, blah, blah. So you don't have to pay for parking. Well, according to her flatmates, that's what they call them, they dropped her off, and she never made it inside the building to check in. Now, I don't, that's it. That's the thing is, like with Australia and Canada, they don't give us any more information. And, but that doesn't stop Websleuths members from really doing a great job of discussing this case. So anyway, I'm going to play this. This is from Sunrise, which is a Australian, like Good Morning America. Okay, I'm going to play this. It has a little bit of information, and then I'll put the link in chat for the discussion on websleuths.com. You really should go, even if you don't join websleuths.com, you should go and read and take a look at these cases, because our members, even with that little bit of information, our members, they do such an amazing job. So here we go. And then I'm going to go let my cat out before she drives us all crazy, even though I told her no. Here we go.
Well, the flatmate of missing 17-year-old Phoebe Bishop has been taken into custody and is seeking bail on unrelated gun offences following an examination, of the grey Hyundai, the centre of the investigation. It comes as Queensland Police believe crucial items of evidence may have been moved from the main search area before detectives had arrived. At this stage, police have not named any suspects or made any arrests in relation to Phoebe's disappearance. For more, we are joined by Dr. Tim Watson-Munro, criminal psychologist, live in Melbourne. Good morning to you. You would have to think the longer this takes, the more concerning it gets.
Absolutely. The golden window is generally 48 to 72 hours. After that, the trail runs cold. This poor girl's now been missing for 12 days, as I understand it. So it's of deep concern that she hasn't been found yet.
So police are concerned that some pieces of evidence may have been moved from that original search area. Is that the case? How difficult can it make the investigation?
Well, it can muddy the waters a bit. I understand that they're now focusing their search in a nearby scrubland forest. They may be acting on inside information or tip-offs, or that may be the natural place to look. But the fact that they're doing that suggests that they may be looking at foul play now.
So when they say they've found items of interest, what does that usually mean?
Well, it's evidence. So it could be evidence related to the disappeared person, personal items, for example. It may be other evidence that may belong to suspected offenders and so on. They're not going to disclose what that is at the moment, I assume, but I would see that too as being a fairly significant development in this case.
Just on the items of evidence that may have been moved, how do they know?
It's a good question. Look, the police don't often telegraph their inside information on cases like this. They don't want to muddy the waters even further. But the fact that they believe it may be moved, may have been moved, suggests that they know more than they're revealing to the public at the moment.
Okay. Guns were allegedly found inside the car that Phoebe travelled in 12 days ago. Will this play into their investigation?
Well, I would imagine so. I mean, nobody's been charged yet, but the fact that firearms have been found, illegal firearms, in a motor vehicle that she travelled in, join the dots. I think it's quite significant.
Okay, and of course there is no suggestion that Phoebe's flatmate has been involved in Phoebe's disappearance. We thank you very much.
Quite
right. Okay, can you guys hear me, or am I muted?
You're good.
Okay, so there you go. They did find, now guns in Australia, big no-no. So her flatmate was arrested for that charge. And so I guess he was the one that supposedly dropped her off. All of that is very fishy. So let's just hope and pray that something happened. Now, again, what I wonder is, wouldn't they have like video cameras, especially if this was a drop-off point to the airport? Wouldn't they be able to see him coming in? Because see, my thought is he never took her to the airport. He just said that. you know, but again, I don't know. So the people on Websleuths are doing an amazing job discussing this case. So I would suggest that you go to websleuths.com, and I put the link in chat for it. You can just go to websleuths.com, and right there at the top, we have Phoebe's case, we have Jack and Lily's case, and you just click on those links. And again, you don't need to join, just read and take a look. And then pretty soon you'll be emailing me saying, Trisha, block me. It's affecting my marriage. I can't tell you how many times, seriously, how many times I have received those type of emails. Like, I can't, all I do is read. I get up in the middle of the night to read. I go to the bathroom to read. I hide reading, because you just get so into it. So anyway, okay. Those are the two big cases. And hopefully tomorrow night, there's a horrible case out of Utah where I think it was a 41-year-old man was talking to a teenager in Utah. And she went to meet him and is now missing. Hopefully we're going to have SF Investigates on to talk about that case and talk more about it. It's a big case. It's blowing up as it should, because these monsters on the internet need to be stopped.
It's terrifying.
It is, Stacy. And the problem is, I look back to when I was that age, and if some older guy that was kind of cute paid me that attention, I was so desperate. I was so desperate for love and attention from a boy. I would have done something, absolutely. So it is terrifying. And we'll talk about it more tomorrow night and give you all the details. Hey, Phrase, it's good to see you, my dear. I am so glad you're with us tonight. Yes.
I know who that is. But
yes, he's a good guy. Joe Neal, You be nice. You be nice.
I had to throw that in for Joe.
Oh, Joe. Joe Neal has this issue with SF
people.
with certain people. Yeah. So there we go. Okay. Now, when I just did a quick run around YouTube, and I saw Lauren's live stream, and I couldn't believe it. I'm like on the eve of, they're sending out, I think, is it 300 electronic question and answer, things to people to try and get jurors. And then on Friday, the jurors will physically come into the courthouse in Maricopa County for Lori Daybell's trial, which is the trial of attempted murder, of the attempted murder of Brandon Boudreaux. The day before they send out these questionnaires, Lori filed. Well, she didn't file it. She filed it a few days ago. It just came out today, and basically, she is whining like a big baby, saying that the judge was making faces at her and he needs to be removed. And wah. I couldn't believe it. So I'm so grateful. We have Megan Connor here. Megan is Lori's cousin, and I'm going to read through this whole document. It's like 7 pages, but I'm going to skip all the stuff about court case, blah 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 blah. I'm just going to read the juicy stuff, okay? And then we're going to come back and discuss it, because Megan had I'm going to bring up stage back. Going to bring you up from backstage, Megan. So here we go. Megan, I was just watching you earlier with Kresha. And by the way, if Kresha's here, let me know. I'd love to bring her up. That would be fantastic. But I heard you say that, and I apologize. Who was the gentleman that you had on with you?
His name is Joe Schmo. He is an excellent researcher.
He's great.
He's been helping to provide me with a lot of these documents because I just don't have time to go searching for them. So he's been a great friend of my channel, and he's got his own new channel.
Oh, good. We'll put it up in chat and get some subscribers to him.
Yeah, it's Joe Schmo 88, and he just caught on to Delphi, I think, and then this case kind of caught him off guard, and he's just learning about a lot of this stuff for the first time.
Oh, I bet he's just in shock.
He is, and it's kind of fun to watch him and Kresha together, because Kresha will say things and Joe will go, "She did not actually do that."
And Kresha's like, "Yes, she did.
Yes, she did. Welcome to the case."
Exactly. Well, he said something very interesting. He said that he felt Lori was just, wasn't going to try anything. I'm totally paraphrasing. Wasn't going to change her way of doing things. Wasn't going to try anything new. And you said just the opposite. You think she has learned from her mistakes, and there might be some like fireworks happening type situation. What did you mean by that?
I really just think that she was embarrassed in this last trial. I think
Mhm.
that she feels really shameful about all of the times that she got shut down by, everybody from the prosecution to the different witnesses. I think she really got it handed to her, and I think she feels rage about that. I think we saw some of that in the last interview that she did with the Arizona True Crime with Brianna.
Mhm.
I think she showed that she's angry at the judge, she's angry at the prosecutor, and I think she's going to see this as her opportunity to sort of reclaim some of her standing. And with a new jury, brand new jury, she knows that these people don't know who she is, or they won't, the ones they choose. And I think that she's learned from the fact that she wasn't able to successfully subpoena anybody. And honestly, I think her failure to testify or put on a defense was just sort of her throwing her hands up in the air and saying, well, fine, if you're not going to let me call witnesses or put on any kind of a defense, then I'm just going to exercise my right to not defend myself. I don't have to. I don't think they made their burden. I think
Mhm.
I think that was a last ditch thing. I honestly think that she did plan to question witnesses. And so I think this time she's going to try harder. I think she's going to try to actually call some people and put on a defense. And now I could be totally wrong about that, because who knows what actually is going on in that addled brain of hers.
Mhm.
Right.
As my dad used to say, her alleged mind.
Exactly.
Oh,
And
excellent.
Not
absolutely right.
he didn't say that about Lori specifically, but usually about drivers on the road when they lose their
Oh,
signal.
excellent, though.
He
I
would say,
love that.
what is going on in your alleged mind?
I
Exactly.
love that.
Now here's the thing. Again, Lori truly believes that Jesus is on her side. And I said this a million times. I think in her brain, she has that religious delusion going on. She thinks that Jesus is going to jump in, cause an earthquake, do something to help her. And it hasn't happened yet. So I think you're absolutely right, Megan. I think she's going to try some new things. What does she have to lose? And she did have her rear end handed to her, and she was embarrassed. And one thing I can pretty much say with certainty, you do not embarrass Lori, Cox, Daybell, all the other names. You don't embarrass her. She will tear you apart. And that's what she is angry at. And I don't know who she could call at this short of a period of time, but she might try. And the judge has bent over backwards to accommodate her. And like somebody said in chat, he's a gray rock. You can't tell what he's saying. The most emotional he ever got was when he said, "Are you done?" When she was yammering on, So she's trying to get him thrown off the case because of, she's just accused him of all this crazy crap. And I'm going to read these pages fairly quickly. And again, I'm going to skip over all the,
Good luck.
I know. Yeah, give me exactly. Give me a little bit of a break here. I will do my best. Let's put it that way.
Well,
And
I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with your reading at all, but the sentence structure is awful.
It's so bad. You're right.
Punctuation is terrible. You can't really tell what she's trying to say. It's pretty bad.
You're absolutely right. And so if you see me stop and just mouth hanging open, it's because I'm like, what the hell is she trying to say? So anyway, yeah, exactly. Spring 20. She reminds me of a toddler who doesn't get their way, and then she throws a tantrum, and that's what she's doing.
Yep.
Now, I want to, before we start reading, I want to just see if we can create a picture here. She has a lawyer who helps her. Now, I'm not sure exactly how that works, but how much can this lawyer help her? Do you have any idea, Megan, how that works?
Yeah, so she has two advisory
two.
counselors.
Okay.
There are two attorneys who are appointed to be her advisory counsel. So they can give her legal advice. They can help her cite case law.
Mm-hmm.
They can tell her whether or not they think her arguments have merit. Now, she doesn't have to consider any of that advice, and all evidence is that she's probably not considering a lot of it. But it's not only that she has two attorneys, but she also has a paralegal, and she also has an investigator. So she has four people besides herself on Team Daybell. So you would think that between the five of them, they might be able to rub two brain cells together. I don't
Mhm.
want to speak disparagingly of the rest of her legal team because look, those two attorneys were assigned to her. That paralegal was assigned to her. I don't know if
Right.
she chose her investigator or if he was assigned, but I don't envy them their job at all. However, I will also say, even if Lori is handwriting these motions and handing them off to her paralegal to type up, there there are words missing and there are the wrong words used, and it's really confusing to try and even decipher what argument she's trying to make. But
Right.
what I always find helpful when you are dealing with somebody who is mentally ill this way, which I believe she is, it is the most helpful thing that you can do is try to look at it from their perspective. And from Lori's perspective, she believes the whole world is against her, and she believes that she is entitled to have all of her motions granted and all of her legal arguments validated. So if you look at it from that standpoint and you read it from that standpoint, then there's a way to sort of understand the argument she's trying to make.
Exactly. And let's remember, Lori had always been catered to by her family.
Yeah.
Again, we've said this a million times. She was allowed to just go on and on and on with all this crazy religious stuff. And Janice said she's not hurting anybody. Well, how did that work out for you, Janice? And Charles Vallow tried desperately to do an intervention, and her family blocked it, threw up roadblocks, told her about it, did everything they could. And to me, that's unforgivable. That woman needed help, and they just, I don't know if they were afraid of her or what, but they just catered to her nonstop. It just makes me sick.
It's really difficult to push back against somebody like this.
Mhm.
And so, I mean, the kindest indictment that I can give is that it was too much work and too much effort to try and deal with Lori. I mean, we've all been listening to her and dealing with her over these last couple of months, and it's exhausting. This is what it's like to be in a relationship with a manipulator like this. And I understand when people just decide to disengage and be like, I can't do anything about it. I can't help her. I'm just going to blah, whatever. But when it comes to harming people, when there's a pattern of somebody actively harming people, you got to do something. You can't just pretend it doesn't exist. And in that way, they enabled her.
Yeah, exactly right. And again, it's her child. It's Janice's child. It's Barry's child. And I get it. I'm sure it must be exhausting. But then again, you have Barry Cox, her dad, who's just as nutty as she is, and I guess maybe I'm expecting too much of them to behave somewhat normally, to behave like a normal parent concerned when your child thinks they're this, translated being that doesn't need to eat, that she talks to Jesus. And maybe, I don't know.
I'm never in favor of using the word normal to describe somebody's mental state.
Right.
Because what is normal?
That's true.
Not really, there's not a framework for that.
Good point.
But I will say this though, as a parent, you have a responsibility to hold your kids in check.
Yes.
And even when they're adults, if they're doing and saying harmful things, or if they are withholding information from you in the way that you don't know what they're up to and you don't know whether or not your grandkids are in danger, that's not okay. You have to call that stuff out, and you can't just sit back and say, well, she's going to the temple every day, so she must be totally righteous. So no, check in with those kids, see how they're feeling, and what happened when Tylee was beside herself. Janice was comforting her, and Colby came in and wasn't even allowed to talk to her.
Now tell us about this. I'm not familiar with this.
This is what Colby says, is that when he showed up at the Cox's house later that day, when he found out that Charles had been shot.
Okay.
And he goes to the Cox's house, and Janice and Barry are there, and Zach is there. And I can't remember if Adam was there or not. I'm sorry. But what I do remember from what Colby said is that when he came into the house, that Tylee was crying. She was beside herself. She was very upset. And Janice kind of shuffled her away. And wouldn't really let Colby talk to her. Now, I could be remembering this wrong because it's been a long time since I've heard this. Sometimes I get the Colby and Adam story conflated a little bit.
Okay.
the bottom line, the thing that I remember that is the most harmful is that Janice wasn't allowing Tylee to interact with people who cared about her, because this is the MO of families like this. They want to keep the stories isolated.
Yes.
So that
Right.
nobody knows the whole story. And if Tylee was saying, I know they killed him, they made me lie, if she was saying anything like that, Janice would not have wanted that information to get out. And that's what I think is the most harmful. You're hearing something that, you know, is the real story of somebody who's been there, and you don't like it. So you're not going to let them tell that story.
Exactly. And that is terrible. That's absolutely terrible. And again, we can't expect Janice and Barry to step back and self-reflect and say, wow, I raised 2 serial killers here.
And V.S. Thibodeau makes a good point. As the parent of adults, there's only so much you can do about their choices. You can ask, advise, even beg for them to do better, but they don't have to obey. But here's my problem. I don't think they did ask. I don't think they did advise. I don't think they did beg for her to do better. I think they let her do what she wanted to do because it was too much trouble to push back.
It was just easy to do that. That was the easy thing to do.
Yeah.
And
I have a quick question, if that's okay.
Yes,
Sorry.
please. Go ahead.
Megan, do you think that Janice and Barry were just like absolutely in complete denial and thought Lori was like perfect by chance?
I think there was some
Good
denial
question.
there. I think it is a great question. I think Lori was the golden child, and so I think they did excuse a lot of her problematic behavior. But to be honest with you, I see Janice and Barry as so wrapped up in their own BS that they were disengaged from the reality of what was happening in their family. Because look, you don't, as a parent, I'm trying to imagine what it would be like if my son attacked the ex-husband of my daughter and did prison time for it.
Yeah.
Right.
The conversations I would have with that boy, I would be right there. I would be engaged. I would be like, what's going on? Let's talk about this. Let's figure this out. They were in close enough proximity that they could have been having those conversations. And the reason I think that they didn't have those conversations is because the pattern repeated itself with Charles. And when they started to see signs of that discard happening, Lori making up lies about Charles, saying he was cheating on her, stealing his truck, stealing money, not telling the whole story, and Charles begging for help. Instead of engaging with Charles and trying to figure out what Lori was doing, they sided with Lori and started informing on Adam and Zach.
Right.
And they ran interference for Lori.
Wow.
That's inexcusable to me.
Yeah.
When you see the pattern repeat, you either have to be just blind or you just have to not care.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly right. And what Glam Dolly said is so true. Poor Charles did everything he could to thwart Lori, but she surrounded herself with enablers. The Cox family has a lot to answer for, and I agree with that. And Summer is another one. And again, we keep hoping, and even Lauren Matthias said this today, and I'm paraphrasing, there's going to be some wild stuff brought out in this case. I hope, because I really want answers. And the reason why I think we deserve answers is exactly what you're saying, Megan. We need to understand this. We need to see the signs. So if this ever happens to anybody again, this is something we can refer to. This is something that we will learn. We will learn from. And that's what we really need to do. Okay, everybody.
That's the whole thing that I'm so passionate about talking about. That's the whole reason I'm even out here in the first place, putting myself out in a public space to talk about my family's story, is because I want other families to recognize these patterns as unhealthy and do something about it.
Exactly. And Teresa Cook, my wonderful cousin that I love and adore, says, I bet Lori's parents have regrets. If they do, they probably keep them to themselves. I don't think they would ever admit it. Do you, Megan?
No, and what is telling to me is that every report that I've heard about Janice talking with Lori is that they don't talk about the case. And you better bet if my child was in prison like Lori was, that's the only conversation we'd be having.
Yeah.
Every single time I talk to that child, I would say, you do realize you're a convicted murderer, right? Like, this is all delusional. You can't be talking about what you're going to wear in court and represent yourself until you admit what you've done.
Exactly. You murdered your children. You murdered them. And you guys, I apologize. This is a bit of kind of a mini emergency. Can you? It's nothing bad. Stacy, can you take over for just a moment?
Yeah.
Thanks. I'll be right back.
Uh-huh. And Megan, you're a grandma now too. We love our grandchildren just like we love our children.
Yeah.
And we would do everything we can for them, even if that means, our children who are their parents having to take some kind of step against them. We would, because that's, the children are their children. They can't
Yeah.
take care of themselves. And we would step in and do whatever we could. And with Janice and Barry, that's the hard part when you think about it, because JJ and Tylee, were children in this situation. And yeah, like you're saying, they probably thought it's too much trouble. I've seen that in another case. And the young woman, she had a mental health disorder. She was very difficult. Her family just didn't want to deal with her. So they just like paid for her to have her own place. And she ends up murdering a young lady, and that's so much of these issues that happen from people with mental health issues or emotional issues can be stopped. They wouldn't even happen if people would try to recognize these signs and actually take the time to try to help in whatever they could with their family when they see them growing up. And a lot of parents don't want to admit there's something wrong with my child, or
Right.
but
Yeah.
we all have to get over that sort of stigma or whatever about it, or the pain it causes us, the distress, thinking there's something wrong with your child, and do
Right.
what we can. So much can be prevented.
And I think you hit the nail on the head. If there's something wrong with Lori, that means there's something wrong with Janice and Barry. And as a parent, you have to learn to separate yourself from your child's actions and just realize that, yeah, we can do all we can for our kids. They can turn out messed up anyway. But that doesn't mean you disengage.
Right.
Right.
If you deal with your own shame, then you realize that it doesn't have a negative impact on you if your kid turns out to have some kind of mental disorder or some
Exactly.
Right.
dysfunction or whatever. But the point is that you have to still engage, and you still have to try and repair, and you still have to try and figure it out. And if your child is in a position where they're going to harm somebody else, in my opinion, you don't ever stop engaging.
Right.
And I've
Exactly.
also been in the position where, one of my kids cut off contact with me and didn't want me to engage with them. And I see Janice and Barry in a similar plight in some ways, because when Lori left Arizona for Idaho, she didn't talk to anybody. She did cut off contact. But I guarantee you, if my daughter took off and cut off contact with me and had my two grandsons with her, I would do everything in my power to find those kids.
Oh, I'd be so worried. Yeah, nothing could stop. Absolutely. And this is a great question. Then I promise I'll read the documents. Traveler says, do you think all these murders would have happened had Alex not been Chad and Lori's hitman? That is a great question.
It's a great question. It's one I think, we have speculated a lot about, and anybody who's involved in this case probably has, but there are a couple of telling things that I want to point to. One is that Chad, before meeting Lori, had told a lot of people that Tammy was going to die young. And you don't say that unless you want it to happen.
Right,
Unless
exactly.
you have some kind of an idea of how that's going to happen. And the other thing is that Lori was poisoning people. She was giving her kids Benadryl so they would sleep more. She was putting Xanax in Charles's smoothies. So she was already poisoning people. And she had already had a lot of conversations about not wanting to be here, not wanting her kids to have to suffer through the end times, all of that kind of stuff. So would it have taken longer? Yes, I think so. I think Chad was a catalyst. I think, if Lori was the gasoline, I think Chad, I hate to say this, Chad was the wood, and Alex was the match. You know,
There you go.
it
Perfect.
kind of took it all to happen at that same
Mhm.
time. I think Lori as Gasoline would have met somebody at some point that was going to help her get this stuff done, because she probably wasn't going to get her hands real dirty on her own. She was probably just going to keep poisoning until there was some kind of accident or something. But I think she would have gotten there. I really do.
Exactly. And I think
Yeah.
Chad would have gotten there with Tammy. I think he was
Yeah.
looking to
I do
upgrade
too.
and get something better for a long time. And
Yep.
that was the reason he chose. Okay, this is what Lori filed a few days ago that just came down the pike today. And it's going to be pretty interesting, people. So hang tight. Let me grab it. And here we go. The defendant, Lori N. Daybell, files with this motion and her affidavit as required to show that the Honorable Justin Brisky has a personal bias or prejudice against her. As a result, the defendant cannot receive a fair or impartial hearing or trial before this court. Based on the affidavit, the defendant respectfully moves that the Honorable Judge proceed no further in this action and that another judge is assigned to hear the case. Okay, I, Lori Daybell, being first duly sworn, say Mrs. Daybell has made multiple motions for the judge to recuse himself from her case. He has refused to recuse, knowingly and willingly violating the Code of Judicial Conduct, blah, 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 blah. On May 14th, 2025, the defendant's cases are in the worldwide media networks. Judge Brisky refused to recuse himself in direct questioning by the defendant. The judge proceeded to breach his duties of the codes of judicial conduct and by further commenting with opinions of the defendant's prior two groups of counsel, the defendant's advisory counsel and the defendant's motion that he has denied without cause or decision to support his denial of requests. A judge should have recused himself related to the merits of their own ruling. What the hell did I just read? Does anybody have any idea? I said I wasn't going to stop, but I'm just, again, my mouth is hanging open. I'll start drooling here. I don't know what the hell that said. Does anybody?
Yeah, so I've been through this several times today. Yes. You know, trying to prepare to do. I just did that live with Crush and
great.
Joe. So there's a lot of stuff going on here, and I think there's a lot that gets left out in sentences and punctuation and all of that stuff. So, basically, I've got it in front of me here too, so I'm skimming over it.
Okay.
The judge breached his duty of the codes of judicial conduct by commenting with opinions of the defendants prior to groups of counsel. Basically, judge didn't like her counsel, didn't like their motions, has denied all the motions without cause.
Well, that's not true. He had perfect cause. It was very easy to see.
Yeah, didn't have any kind of legal decision to support his denial, and he should have recused himself related to the merits of their own ruling. Doesn't make any sense, but he should have recused himself is basically
it.
Yeah.
Okay, let me continue here. In regard to the complaint of judicial misconduct, a judge commits error of laws in the process of reaching discretionary conclusions is abuse of discretion. On May 14th, 2025, court proceeding Judge Brisky's behavior and judicial acts fall within the scope of bad faith. The acts were intentionally committed, and the judge knew or should have known that his actions were beyond a judge's lawful power and without lawful power of judge, but for corrupt purpose, which includes any other than faithful discharge of judicial duty. Regarding Rita Jett, and then it gives the case thing, Carroll versus Commission on Judicial Conduct or otherwise committed acts deserving discipline. The motions that the defendant's prior two legal counsel teams, the defendant and her current advisory counsel, have advised for the defendant to file for evidence and further motions of requests are crucial to define preparation, witness, experts, evidence, proof of innocence, cross-examination, rebuttals, and foundation to the defense, all of which Judge Brisky has deprived the defendant of access to the evidence. A judge abuses his discretion in controlling discovery, and then it mentions a case, to the administration of justice. A request for presiding disciplinary judge is being made on Judge Justin Brisky. On May 14th, 2025, the judge refused to apply or understand the direct guidelines of the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office own attorney, Maricopa County Attorney's Office Civil Attorney Joseph Vigil. On March 20th, 2025, Maricopa County Sheriff's Office response to remove restraints during trial on page 3 without any restraints in the courtroom. MCSO would recommend an unarmed detention officer and an armed sheriff's deputy in the courtroom. The belt is visible on the defendant and has fallen off the defendant in prior trial proceedings. The motion was denied by the judge. Under the Sixth Amendment, jurors' glimpses of defendant in restraints can rise to a level of due process violation. A person subjects another to the deprivation of a constitutional right within the meaning of Section 42, blah, 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 if he or she does an affirmative act, participate in another affirmative act, or omits to perform an act which he or she is legally required that causes deprivation. Anyone causing any citizens to be subjected to a constitutional deprivation is also liable. The requisite causal connection can be established by a series of acts by which the actor inflicted the constitutional injuries and abuse of discretion. Judge Boriski's denial of both Maricopa County Sheriff's Office and Maricopa County Attorney's Office Civil Attorney Mr. Vigil's recommendations and the defendant's motion for removal of restraint belt. The defendant is pro per filed May 10, 2025 and denied by Judge Boriski. On May 14, 2025, Judge denied defendant's motion to dismiss the abuse of discretion by Judge Boriski filed on April 26, 2025 for a violation of a Speedy Trial Act. Under blah, 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 resulted in miscarriage of justice, failure to make prescribed findings to justify ends of justice, continuance cannot be, there's no commas or anything. You have no idea what she's saying. I'm sorry, let me back up. I'm going to start over here. This resulted in a miscarriage of justice, failed to make prescribed findings to justify ends of justice, continuance cannot be excused as harmless error under the Speedy Trial Act. An end of justice must be filed, therefore, violation of rule blah, blah, blah. The Sixth Amendment right to speedy trial. Congress enacted the Speedy Trial Act, which criminal trials must commence. Under blah, 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 the Speedy Trial Act and case law are silent as to what a non-stationary factor district court should generally consider. That's my dog snoring, everybody. I'm sorry. It's so loud. A court abuses its discretion when it fails to consider all factors relevant to the choice and the factors it did rely on were unsupported by facts under 16 ARS Rules of Crime Proc Rule 8.6. Denial of speedy trial, if the rules have been violated, the court must dismiss the prosecution with or without prejudice. Violating the speedy trial rule does not violate the spirit of the rule and the fact the defendant is deprived of due process. The state and Judge Boriski failed with, quote, end of justice, unquote, for continuance. Judge Boriski therefore violated the Speedy Trial Act with failure to justify a continuance. May 11, 2025 was the Speedy Trial Act limit of timeline for trial. Judge Boriski violated blah, 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 and this was motivated by, quote, bad faith, unquote. Jimenez versus Judge Chavez gives the court case. The speedy trial clock has exceeded the maximum days. The act is violated. Thus, the case should be dismissed. Dismissal without prejudice is not a toothless sanction for a Speedy Trial Act violation in U.S. versus Spainer. The court failed to request findings to justify end of justice continuance, thus violating Speedy Trial Act. Warranting dismissal based on court violations. The Speedy Trial Act impasses strict specificity requirements for ends of justice. The district court fails to comply with them. And it lists a bunch of cases. No continuance period may be excluded from speedy trial computation. Is that right? Computation. A continuance period is not excludable from speedy trial calculations. The trial court's failure to set forth in the record its reasons for findings by granting a continuance violates blah, blah, blah. The indictment time period violates the Speedy Trial Act. the defendant's conviction would be reversed and the cause of remanded for dismissal of indictment. On April 9th, 2025, Judge Boriski, in trial, which media networks aired this comment against the defendant, violating the Religious Freedom Restoration Act of 1993. Judge Justin Boriski stated, "I guess to the extent that you are comparing yourself to biblical figures, I will allow it." This was a malicious act by Judge Boriski to the defendant, manifesting discrimination and religious prosecution against Mrs. Daybell's religious exercise beliefs and practices. The comments compound the prejudice of an erroneous misunderstanding for the purpose of fundamental error. The defendant only needs to establish one prong to prove fundamental error. A judge who engages in improper behavior while on the bench is sanctions imposed, ARS Constitutional Art 6.1, unprofessional conduct. It violates the ARS Subcourt Rules, Rule 41, duties and obligations of members. Under SCR Rule 4090, disqualification, 1, grounds a judge must recuse himself from any proceedings while a judge expressed an opinion concerning merits of the proceeding or in which the judge has a personal bias against a party. Regarding all read, and that gives a case, a judge violates due process by not recusing under the 14th Amendment. With judicial decree does not justify public comment by a judge related to matters which is outside context of official proceeding. A judge public comment risk of appearing, I swear to God, this is insane. A judge public comment risk of appearing the judge impartiality and objectivity is compromised in violation of Canon 1, 2, and 3. The comment is order for dismissal. 1, I am the defendant in the above entitled case. 2, I am informed and believe, and based on that information belief, allege that the Honorable Justin Boriski, the judge before whom this case is pending, has personal bias against the defendant, Lori N. Daybell, in favor of the state. A judge who manifests bias or prejudice in proceeding impairs the fairness of the proceeding and brings the judiciary into disrepute. Let's see. Facial expressions, attitude, demeanor, and statements deprive the defendant of a fair and impartial hearing. Bias or prejudice of judge. A judge shall not preside once affidavit is filed. The facts and the reasons for the belief that such bias or prejudice exists are a statement of facts. I just want to see if I missed anything. 7, 6, no continuance. Yeah. I think I read it all.
Would you give me permission to share a clip?
Please, absolutely. Go for it.
There's something that I can't add it to the screen, but there's something that always comes to mind whenever I read something like this. I shared it, but I can't add it to the stage.
Okay, I can add it. Here it is. Here we go. This one?
Yep.
Okay, now.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
Oh my God, that is perfect.
God, I love that.
I want to buy your house.
That is so perfect.
It's
Absolutely
just one of my favorite
perfect.
things ever. It's from it's from an Adam Sandler movie called Billy Madison.
Oh yeah.
But every time I hear something like this, especially from Lori, I'm like, we are all now dumber.
We are. And guys, the only thing I skipped over were the court cases and the rules, SPR, I just skipped over those. Okay. And I just read what was in there and it made no sense. Thank you, Laura Thomas says, good job without your head exploding. It made so basically, from what I understand that Lori is saying, number one, that the belt is the problem. Okay. And that prejudiced the jury against her because it fell off and they saw it and blah, blah, blah. And they should have had an armed guard and a regular guard there in case there was a problem. The other thing was that he made faces and that statement where he said, well, if you're going to compare yourself to these people. But in that statement that he made about the religious comparison, he was agreeing with her, right? He was giving her what she wanted.
I think he was vocalizing his thought process as he was trying to decide whether or not to overrule or sustain the objection. And the thing that infuriates me is that he was overruling the state's objection. He was ruling in Lori's favor when he made that comment.
Exactly. I'm going to try and find it here again if I can really quickly. Facial expressions, guidelines. Where is it? Now I can't find it. Hold on,
Is
let me
that
see.
the document I sent you by chance?
Well, it's the 7 pages you sent me.
Okay. Well, I haven't read it yet. So, wow. I need
I
to
know.
read that.
I know. I'm trying to find it where where he says that. Do you know what page that's on?
I haven't read it.
I
Megan,
know.
there are 8 total.
I just have 7.
Yeah, so let me look at my copy here real quick about specifically. Okay, it's on page 4. The facial
4.
expressions, line 2. The facial expressions, attitude, demeanor, and statement deprive the defendant of a fair and impartial hearing. In conduct that is prejudicial to the administration of justice, a request for presiding disciplinary judge is being made on Judge Justin Bresky.
And then she talks about the belt, but it was that one where she talks about what he said to her.
Oh, I don't think she cites that specifically in this motion.
I thought she did. I thought I read that. I swear I thought I read that.
I'm scanning through it again.
Let's see. I swear, because I swear I read it. God, if I didn't read it.
On page 6, line 22, it says on April 9th, 2025, Judge Bresky, in trial, which media networks aired his comment against the defendant, Judge Justin Bresky stated, I guess to the extent that you're comparing yourself to these biblical figures, I will allow it.
That was it. Yeah, that's what I was talking about. Yeah. So in other words, in that part, he was overruling the objection and allowing her to continue because she was comparing herself to these biblical figures. That was nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, Trina Kay made an objection as to relevance because she was questioning the witness, Serena Sharp, about biblical figures that had been quote unquote translated.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was basically trying to make the religious argument that the LDS faith does believe that there are people who have been translated.
Exactly. And so he was saying, well, since you're comparing yourself to these figures, yes, I will allow it. And now she's trying to use that against him, saying that he made a negative no, all he did was state the fact of what she was doing.
Yeah.
And like Brenda Kaufman says, she is never specific. As Judge Bresky already said, if your motions are based on law and have legal precedents, I'll consider them. Just because you say something doesn't make it true.
Right.
And the way she wrote that and just presented all this case law, I can't imagine that any of the case law she presented had anything really to do with what she was saying. Now, Megan, do you know on case law like that, would that be something that she would ask her lawyer helpers or her paralegal to look up to say, can you find case law that I can quote on this? Or would that be something she'd look up?
I'm speculating, but she does not have access to a law library in the Estrella County Jail. So it would be something she would have to take to that advisory council and say, hey, this is the legal argument that I want to make, or this is what I'm upset about. Can you help me find a legal precedent for that?
Mm-hmm. And so that's they probably did the best they could with, dealing with her. And Mickey Kiker says, 2 things, Lori. Whoops, I just lost it here. Let me pull up here. 2 things Lori seems to be terrified of. People thinking she's stupid and crazy. And oh my goodness, she is both. And that's true. And
in that vein, her greatest fears are coming true right now. And I think that's why she's so angry, is because she's been publicly humiliated and she is trying to claw back a little bit of clout or some modicum of self-respect, in this next trial. I think that's what we're going to see.
And I'm sure the same people that enabled her all this time are probably enabling her now. I don't know that for a fact, but I can't imagine Janice saying, Lori, it's not working. Don't do it. I can see her saying, that's good, honey. That's good.
Right.
You're so smart. You're so good. I can see her
Well,
doing that.
unfortunately, I can imagine Barry doing that. I think
Yes.
this could be something they could bond over, that
Mhm.
Barry
Yeah.
could be helping her with this defense. And, it just, so many of these things that I've read make a lot more sense when I read them in Barry's voice.
Really? Now
There you
that's
go.
Well,
interesting.
just because
Yeah.
of the way that he liked to spout and pontificate and overemphasize things.
Mhm.
Mm.
Are there any recordings out there of Barry Cox?
So he did appear briefly in the documentary The Sins of Our Mother.
Oh,
And
that's right. Yes.
yeah, his only comment was that Lori thought he was a spiritual giant. That's all that made it into the documentary.
Mhm.
So, I mean, that you do get a sense of his cadence in that little clip that he has, like a sense of the way that he talks.
Is it like and I please do not take offense when I say this, but is it like the LDS cadence where they talk like this and da 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 da? Is it like that, or is it more bold?
No, it's definitely more bold. The LDS cadence, they tend to, especially if you notice with the elders, the missionaries, when they get out of the MTC, they all kind of talk alike each other.
They
And
do.
they have a tendency to lilt up at the end of their sentences.
Mhm.
And that gives you a second to question if what they're saying is correct. And it seems a little less obtrusive.
Right.
It's like,
Yeah,
I'm telling you something I really believe in.
Mhm.
It's almost like it's a question.
Exactly.
But Barry's cadence was always more emphatic, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
It was like he would say a phrase and then there were certain words that were emphasized. And could you even believe that this was the case?
Oh, really?
I
That's
do what I
interesting.
have to do. And then, who knows if it's going to even go the way, because who even knows what's going to happen next? There was just this sort of performative aspect to the way that he would talk.
When you spent a lot of time with this family in the summer when you were a kid, how religious were the Cox family? Was the Cox family? Did they do the big prayer, around the dinner table and go to church every Sunday and talk about church all the time? And
yeah, so when you're Mormon, it's your whole life, all day, every day, you're supposed to be doing something Mormon, prayer,
Okay.
scripture study, whatever. So they paid very good lip service to being Mormons. They checked a lot of the exterior boxes that you have to check. So yeah, they went to church. Barry loved to give long prayers. He prided himself on being a teacher of the oldest of the young men, and then later on teaching the older men. He really prided himself on that. And then when Janice and Barry were temple workers in San Antonio, like that's kind of the pinnacle of what you can get to if you're not in Salt Lake,
Right.
to be a temple worker. And so that I think they really viewed themselves as very righteous people and everything. But, a lot of the family is about appearance and a lot of the religion is about appearance. As long as people are saying and doing the things publicly, who knows what's really going on behind closed doors. Well, of course I did know, and so did a lot
Yes.
of us family members. But really, I learned a lot more about the Cox family when they were living in San Antonio than I did as a kid visiting them in the summers. And this is kind of where I think some family members are like, she wasn't that close to the family. But when Janice and Barry lived in San Antonio for those 10 years, my family was over at their house 10 or 12 times a year. And it was always for some kind of a holiday or event. So it was always Barry presiding over the event and giving these long-winded prayers and telling us what he thought about politics and religion and the latest teachings of the church and everything. So, I got to hear a lot about his ideas and listen to a lot of things that he wanted to tell us, whether we wanted to hear him or not. And
Right.
then for a long time, I was on the receiving end of his very long email chains where he would, again, just pontificate about politics and religion and tell us what he thought we should be doing with our lives. And I don't think I ever really responded to those emails, but I did. I mean, I got them for a really long time until I stopped getting them. So,
Right. Megan, can you hang on? I have an important question I want to ask you. But first, I need to tell you about our wonderful, amazing friends at DNA Solves. Now, we played this video last night. I want to play it again because we have a lot of new people here in chat. Okay. We here at Websleuths.com, that's a true crime discussion forum. We have no advertising on that forum. We don't have ads on this live stream or any recordings that we do. But what we ask you to do is, if you possibly can, become what we call a subscriber to DNA Solves. And let me just play a little video here for you quickly, and then we'll talk a bit more about this, and then get back to the Lori Daybell case and her family and how they perpetrated what she became. So here we go.
Across the country, investigators are now turning to a new company called Authra.
Kitsap County deputies have solved a 26-year-old cold case.
Arizona mystery is finally solved thanks to DNA. A body found in the Escatawpa River in Mississippi back in 1982 has just been identified.
Cold cases across the country finally getting solved after decades of dead ends.
Anyway, that is Authram, which is DNA Solved. DNAsolves.com is the website that is used to post all of these cases that desperately need your help to fund them, so we can get all of these cases answered. Now, each one of these cases, it's remains basically. It could be just a little bit. It could be a whole body. It all depends. But each one of the DNA tests that they do costs $7,500. Now, not only do they do the scientific testing, okay, but they also do the incredible genealogy research. And how they do it, I can't even begin. It's so amazing. Nobody else in the world is doing what DNA Solves and Authram are doing. But we need your help. Again, we don't have any advertising on this channel or on Websleuths.com. And if you want to help, if you want to make a difference, I put the link in chat right now. It's pinned in chat as well. If you could become what's called a monthly subscriber, meaning once a month, you make an automatic donation. It could be for $1, it could be for $5. And if you can't do it every month, click on that link anyway and choose a case that needs funding. They're all over the United States, and there are so many. And again, I think it's hard for us to wrap our heads around the fact that one day your loved one is there and they leave and you never see them again. My God, the nightmare that these families must be going through, trying to figure out what happened to their loved ones. And DNA Solves gives them those answers. So if you could please click on that link. It is pinned at the top of chat, and I've just put it in the chat again as well. I would greatly appreciate it. And so many family members will thank you for helping them get the answers that they deserve. Megan, we've talked about this before, but it's been quite a while. And it's something that has really disturbed me. Whenever I think of this, there's so many things that disturb me. But we've talked about the fact that Alex and Lori had an inappropriate relationship, in my opinion. Now, I don't know what they did, but I do know Alex's ex-wife was so uncomfortable with it that she was hanging out with Alex and Lori. They were friends after the divorce, and she said, I can't do it anymore. They just made me feel so uncomfortable. You know, she'd be sitting in his lap and putting his arms around her. And didn't Lori run up and throw her arms around Alex and then her legs around his waist? Didn't she do things like that you saw, Megan?
I never saw her do that specifically. I've heard Debbie talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
But what I did see was Lori and Summer frequently grabbing their brother's pecs and squeezing. I did see them bumping butts and sometimes like rubbing on each other in weird ways and things like that. And I think it was kind of Alex's way of like getting a rise or a reaction out of people.
Mm-hmm.
And it was always pretty brief. You know, it wasn't like they went on and on and on, but, you know, making weird noises and things like that. It's just not normal behavior between siblings, normative human behavior.
Right.
And it certainly is not like, I have 2 brothers. I would never do any of those things with
no.
either of my brothers.
No. Never. And did Janice and Barry, were they inappropriate? Weren't there, again, and I can't remember if this was Alex's ex that told me this or somebody else. They'd go in the bedroom in the afternoon and everybody knew what they were doing type of thing.
That was me. I'm the one that said that. And yeah, I mean, that was horrifying for me because my parents were very quiet about those kinds of things. And, you know, I was young enough when I first started hearing about those things and seeing those things, 11, 12, 13 years old, that I was shocked and horrified. And I was like, I don't want to know. Just wanted to like plug my ears. I don't want to hear this conversation. But then I also remember Alex bringing up, and I didn't remember this until just recently, somebody else reminded me that the LDS Church issued a memo in 1981 telling people that they should not be having oral sex, like even if they're married couples.
Whoa, back up, Jack. I'm sorry, my brain just went.
This is a real verifiable thing. You can look it up on Reddit. They have the actual letter from the first presidency telling married members that they should not be having oral sex.
Do they call it oral sex or do they dance around it?
I think they actually call it oral sex.
Why?
And I don't know the reason for it, but somebody tried to convince me the other day that all these women were complaining about it. And I was like, are you kidding? Women have never had any kind of clout or voice in the church. And I can't
not going to listen to that complaint if it's true.
That specific complaint, right? But I remember Alex bringing this up, and it was something I wouldn't have known about. Like in 1981, I was like, 7 years old. So it was a couple years after that, probably. But I remember him talking about it, and then Barry's response was, the brethren have debunked that, and they've decided that they should stay out of the bedrooms of the members of the church. And I was like, what the hell did I just hear? You know, so those kinds of conversations, though, were fairly regular and normal to talk about specific sexual things with the whole family there, you know, if not at the dinner table, then just like when everybody was gathered together.
I don't even know what to say to that. I'm thinking of all my LDS relatives that I love and adore, and them seeing a memo like that would just, they wouldn't know what to do. They would be in such shock.
Absolutely wild. The amount of control that they want to exert over their members. And if you look at the church handbook, which is really what dictates how the church runs, it's got like hundreds and hundreds of sections, and it's written by attorneys, and every section has a subsection. When I was going over the new policy for how to deal with trans members, it was like 16.9.2.2.
What?
You have to go all the way down to that to get to the specific direction. Somebody pointed out to me the other day, it was Jenny Gage when I was interviewing her on my channel. There's a specific condemnation of twinkle lights on Christmas trees in the church building. Like, what?
Huh? Wait a minute. Why? Why?
I have no idea why they would make that. But the thing is that you have to remember, it all comes down to the legality of things and protecting the Mormon Church from litigation. That's what the whole handbook is about. And so, you know, they have this thing that they can refer to on very, very specific matters. And I think it's just ridiculous. You know, there is, when you're in the church, I do remember feeling this sort of sense of safety that anything that I needed to know, I could look it up in the handbook. And I never had to have any questions about twinkle lights or anything like that because they've already told us. The famous quote from, I think it was Bruce R. McConkie, who was one of the upper leaders of the church, passed away in I believe just maybe 10 years ago or so. His famous quote was, "When the brethren have spoken, the thinking is done."
That's not good. No,
it's not.
Disturbing. That's very disturbing. Oh, we could go on and on about that for hours, but I'm going to change topics here a little bit. And we've talked about this before just recently. Dr. John from Hidden True Crime found evidence of Munchausen by proxy. Lori doctor shopped and tortured her daughter Tylee until she found doctors to remove her gallbladder. Lori is a sick, weird person. Now, I didn't know that. Is that correct, that she did doctor shop to get a gallbladder removed? I mean,
So
it's obvious. If you have a gallbladder problem, you're in a lot of pain and they'll remove it.
Yeah.
well, this is the first I'm hearing of a gallbladder removal, but
Mhm.
speaking from experience,
Right.
having my own gallbladder issues at one point,
Me too.
if you want your gallbladder to be removed, you can find someone to remove it.
Right,
You know,
right.
if you want your appendix to be removed, you can find someone to remove it. Those are the kind of things. So it doesn't surprise me to hear. I know that Lori shopped for the specific, and I could be remembering this wrong. So I always want to say my memory is great, but I do get things wrong sometimes. I think I remember somebody saying that when she was doing her divorce from Joe and they were having those custody evaluations done and mental health evaluations, I think I remember somebody saying that she, was very specific about which evaluator she's going to go with.
Mhm.
And that's not necessarily an indictment. I mean, my partner was super specific about which evaluator he
Sure.
was going to use in his case or
Right.
whatever. But the point being that, I mean, if we want to use that as an example, if you get a result you don't like, you just go to a different evaluator
Right.
and you pay
Yeah.
them whatever you have to pay them to get the result. And you can go into a doctor's office and saying, well, our other doctor didn't really want to risk removing the gallbladder but she's obviously in so much pain and I would just
Mhm.
really love to see her relieved from that. Like, I can see this manipulation
Happening.
going
Yeah.
on with her. Yeah. And I
There's also,
absolutely
oh, go
do
ahead.
believe the evidence of Munchausen's by proxy or factitious disorder, as they call it now.
Exactly. Calm Kitty too. My apologies. That is my pug, and he's sound asleep. And I've tried to get him to quiet down. I've told him to quit snoring, and he just ignores me. So I do apologize. I'm sorry, Stacy. You were going to say something.
Yeah, I would actually like to know more about that because then there's also the other possibility, but like I said, I have no idea. I haven't heard this before. That the doctor shopping. Sometimes now I know I've been doing this for years.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have this really bad abdominal pain in my upper abdomen, and I have went to doctor after doctor after doctor to try to find what's causing the pain. And during this, I went to Stanford Medical Center in California, and they said, okay, well, we're going to remove your gallbladder. As you know,
Mm-hmm.
of course, that wasn't the problem. Unfortunately, that would have been so nice. But sometimes people go to doctor because they're trying to find out what's wrong.
Right.
So that'd be interesting to find out what her purpose for the visits were.
Well, as Colby has stated, Lori went to the gym. She ate right. She was healthy, and Tylee and Colby ate junk food, and they were tubby. And I can only imagine the pressure put on Tylee because Janice and Barry and that family, they were all about looks. You have to look good, we've seen that picture. They're not wearing their church garments. They look like they're at a New Year's Eve party, and it's all about looking good. And I can just imagine what Lori said to Tylee. Again, there's no proof of it, but I can't imagine that she wasn't criticizing her about her looks. I just can't imagine.
Yeah, see, that's where I have a discrepancy in my mind over factitious disorder. One, I
Mhm.
mean, there's a lot in this case, but that one is okay. So the way Lori was about looks, you would think, and I've seen people say, well, she was making her sick because there is making somebody sick so you can kind of control them. But you would think Lori, in the way she was, that she would want Tylee to be thin, so she wouldn't be doing things to keep her down. She would have been doing things to make her more fit,
Unless she
exercise and
wanted,
things like that.
her to be sick, so she could, have that's
Control, like, yeah,
exactly,
as I said,
exactly.
that's the two things there, control or that, because the other stuff, yeah, those
I
are the
just,
only two things, because I could
I
see.
just think she's. I just, when I think of Tylee, my heart breaks, and Colby. And Lee T says, Colby has
Oh my
said that
God.
one time Lori asked him if they should drive off a dangerous road, and he felt like it was up to him. He was still a child, and Tylee was in the car too. I don't even know what to say to that, Megan. And by the way, Megan's channel at third_verse, we're putting it in chat right now. So please visit it and please subscribe. Okay, I'm sorry, Megan, go ahead.
No, it's fine. I heard Colby tell this story, and that he and Tylee were in the car, and Lori asked Tylee, you know, should we just drive off this road? We could all go to heaven together right now. And Colby, of course, was terrified because Tylee was like 3 or 4 at the time. And she was like, sure, Mom, you know, of course, like she didn't know what she was saying. And Colby really felt, you know, he felt, of course, very terrified in that situation. It was so relieved when Lori decided not to. But that was sort of her mentality. And she has said that to multiple people. I remember having that conversation with her too, where she would say, it'll be so much easier for us to raise our kids, you know, when Jesus comes. So it would be so much easier if we just all go to heaven now, and then we don't have to worry about all this other stuff. So it's kind of a problematic, it's a Mormon mindset to look so forward to the next life, knowing that it's going to be better than this one, that you just count this one as kind of nothing because the next one is going to be a lot more consequential.
Exactly.
I understand that. There's a few religions like that. I understand that. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of them. So do you think, I'm trying to figure out the best way to word this. And do you think that there was a time when Lori was kind of normal when it came to religion? You know, that she wasn't this this crazy woman, but like over time, it was like her ego got out of control, and she thought she was this translated being, and Jesus was her favorite, basically. Do you think that was just her ego growing out of control, or I can't figure it out? I can't put my finger on it. Any help you can give me, I'd appreciate.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we were teenagers, she had kind of a normal-ish view of religion where it was like, you know, this stuff is strict and I don't like it, so I'm going to pick and choose what I'm going to follow and not follow.
Right.
I think that's pretty normal for a teenager.
Sure.
Of course, though, as a Mormon, you're always going to be fed these messages. Of course, we're indoctrinated from birth, basically, to believe all these things, you know, memorize these songs, memorize these scriptures. And then those things really do stick with you. They stay with you. And I know for me personally, as a young adult, you know, going through my phase of not really being involved in the church and, you know, being a normal, you know, 20-something, partying, drinking, whatever, and ending up married to someone who wasn't a Mormon, I always had that voice in the back of my head that was like, you need to go back to church. You're never going to be happy unless you go back to church. You're never going to be acceptable to your family unless you go back to church. You're not, you know, it's like that voice is always there.
Right.
And so, you know, it's easy to imagine that Lori had that Mormon guilt, and she was trying, I know for a fact that she was marrying these non-members and then saying, well, I'll just convert them, you know, and that they would get, you know, baptized or be interested in the church and then eventually go to the temple, which she achieved that with Charles.
She did.
You know, so I think that was kind of the achievement she wanted, but it wasn't enough because she got tired of Charles and she wanted somebody who could give her something even more. So I think the religious delusion came in when she started going to all of these extra conferences, putting a lot of stock in the near-death experience books and wanting to believe that she was special too in that same way. And that, you know, I think that's why she manufactured a near-death experience for her allocution statement. I think that's why she aligned herself so closely with Chad. And I do a whole video on my channel about how I think that interaction went when they met. And the fact that I think that they were talking for a long time before they ever met in person. And I think that Chad's, you know, adoration of her was just what she was looking for at that time. And
boy, did he adore her. You know, you are a goddess. You're going to help lead the 144,000. And that shot her right up there, you know, got her up to the next level. Do you know the name of that video? I'd love to post it.
You know, let me look it up. I have a couple of playlists on my channel. One of them is Thoughts on the Daybell trial, and I think it's on that playlist. So I'm just going to look for it really quick.
Okay, that's good. And I'll read some comments that we have here. U4EA says, I think she's crazy like a fox, and both cooked this up. Kelly J says, Adam said his grandma was special and Lori always wanted to be like her. And Crocheting Bammy says, she was primed to accept Chad's nonsense. Yes, she absolutely was. So
Yeah, so there are 3 videos that I think are really important. Well, actually, there are 4 videos I think are really important. 3 of them are on my Thoughts on the Daybell Trial playlist. One of them is Shocking Revelation about when Chad and Lori really met.
Mm-hmm.
The other one is The Most Asked Question about Lori and Chad.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one on that playlist is Do Chad and Lori Believe It? And I discussed the jailhouse call that they had with each other.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just that came up in the trial. And then the last one is the Barry Cox interview, or the Barry Cox video that I just posted last week, I think it was, that really dives into the family history of Barry's family and some
That's
of
a
the
great
mentality
video.
that he had.
That has reached, did you say over, how many downloads did that reach?
I think it's around 120,000 views at this point,
Amazing.
which is crazy for my little tiny channel. So
That,
I'm
well,
grateful. It sounds like people are really finding value in it. And that's what I'm really glad about, is that it does really help people understand how Lori got to be the way she was.
Exactly. So I'm just trying to find this playlist here.
I think I can link it for you.
If you could, that'd be great. Because I've got the playlist, the hidden parts of your personality, live secrets exposed, members only. Thoughts on the Daybell trial. Is that it?
Yep, that's it.
Okay, I got it. Hang on. Let me get this here. This is great. So yeah, everybody, these videos can really answer a lot of our questions. And we will always have questions when it comes to Lori and Chad Daybell and what they knew, when they knew it, who's still going along with it. I worry about Chad's kids. I worry about Emma. I think she still believes her father.
Yeah.
I think it's creepy that she tried to make herself look like Lori after she had her hairstyle look like her mother.
I do too.
You know, and then she threw her mother under the bus when she went on the stand. I'm sorry, Megan, go ahead.
No, that's okay. Just Kresha and I were talking tonight on the show that we just did, that, you know, if we were talking about all these other people that were involved, the other, you know, 6 gatherers or whatever they called themselves, if they felt any kind of remorse, then we would know everything. We would know exactly what happened.
Very good point.
We would know exactly what happened to the kids. We would know exactly how everything went down and who was involved, because I can't imagine being burdened with that knowledge and not saying something about it.
Exactly. That's a very good point. And Northwest said, did we read the state's reply? We couldn't find it, but I know Joe Schmo had it on your channel. And basically it was just like, this is ridiculous. No, this is stupid. Is what it said, you know. So
yeah, and I did ask him to send it to me, but I think he must already be asleep. He's probably wiped out. But it really was very brief and succinct, and it said she didn't bring any legal arguments here. She didn't.
Right.
There's no facts in any of this, and it should be denied. So that's all.
Yeah, that's it. Just what you would expect. Yvonne Bennett says, "Hey Megan, your Barry Cox deep dive was world class. It really was." Question: do Barry and Janice think Alex was guilty? Adam sure doesn't. I can't believe that. I can't believe. Does Adam really not think that Alex is innocent?
Yeah, I find it hard to believe that Adam does not believe that Alex was guilty, because Adam was the one who kind of pushed back against his family and said, you know, I think this was a setup against Charles, at least. Now, I don't know how Adam feels about the kids and Tammy. I don't know. Maybe he died. I don't know. But as far as Janice is concerned, I don't know how she feels now. But her comment to my dad when Alex died, you know, my dad said, how come, you know, there was no funeral or whatever, we weren't invited? And Janice said, we only invited people who didn't believe he was a murderer. So it was a very small group of people.
Oh my God.
So that was at the time. I don't know if she's had a change of heart now. I don't know if she's listened to the trial testimony or seen any of the evidence or any of that kind of stuff. I don't know. But I do think that it's somewhat telling that she showed up to one of Lori's hearings in Arizona, but that's the only thing she's ever shown up to.
Right. Brandon Kuhn says Adam doesn't believe that. I don't know. I mean, I have a hard time believing that Adam thinks Alex is
Yeah.
innocent, but I don't
Yvonne
know.
said she misspoke.
Oh, she did?
That
Okay.
Adam believes Alex is guilty. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. That was a miss. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, that's what I thought. I'm like, oh my gosh, he was the one, you're right. He was the one pushing back and trying to organize the meeting with everybody. Yeah.
Right.
So that's good to know. I had a heart attack there. So
Uh,
yeah. Yeah. Adam was afraid that Alex would kill him until Alex died. I think there were a
Right.
lot of people that were afraid that while Alex was alive, that I mean, I'm
You
sure
know,
everybody,
anybody who had ever crossed Lori or said anything against her at all,
Yeah.
I did go out and put a security system on my house, and I was so relieved when he died.
Hmm.
I really was, because I was like, oof, okay, I don't think anyone's coming for me now, And
Exactly.
I did hear that there was a list of family members that were labeled light and dark, and I hadn't seen it at the time. And
Hmm.
thank goodness I wasn't important enough to be on the list. But I did
yeah.
question that, because I did give Lori pushbacks, and we did disagree sometimes. And I was like, is this going to be revenge for the apartment? Like
Absolutely.
I really was worried, because they were talking about killing something. They said something like there's 40,000 zombies and they all need to be eliminated. And I was like, whoa.
That's a lot. That's more
Of
than
all
just
the
family
people,
members.
yeah, of all the people that Lori and Alex have a vendetta against, I mean, I probably would be in that 40,000 at least.
Hmm. Yeah, at
No
least.
kidding.
At least. And Kelly J says, I listened to Adam and Rex and they both fully believe Alex is guilty. Yes, that poster misspoke. So let's just make that very
Yeah.
clear that
Yes.
that Adam and Rex do believe Alex is guilty. But what is shocking to me, and you've said this before, is that Janice said they only invited people who didn't think Alex was a killer.
Yeah.
How could she not see that now? We don't know. We don't know what she feels like now.
Yeah,
But
that's true.
I just, I
Yeah.
don't know how she couldn't see it. Yeah. And Tiff Knox says, oh my gosh, that's scary, Megan. You are absolutely right to be terrified, because nobody knew where Lori's anger ended.
Yeah, and the thing I was most scared about is that my oldest daughter was living in Rexburg at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Oh, please.
I reached out to her and I was like, hey, if Lori contacts you and tries to get you to go to extra church,
Yes.
please say, don't even answer the phone. I was like, just so you know, Lori might try to reach out. I don't know if she knows that you're living there or not, but it would make sense that she would try to gather people. And because Lori and Colby had been close when they were younger, I really was afraid that Lori was going to reach out to her and try to get her into this little group.
Mm-hmm.
And I was terrified for my daughter. I really was. But then my oldest grandson was born in April of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And I went up there to be with her during that time. And I seriously considered stopping by the jail to see if Lori would talk to me or see me. And I ultimately decided against it.
So glad you didn't.
But I'm really sad that I didn't know then more about what was going on, because I think I would have spent some time in the community talking to people and reaching out to people to find out what they knew and what was going on, because all I knew was what I was hearing on the news. And I knew that Lori had been arrested and that she was in Rexburg, but I had no idea that there were still all these other people around that I could have talked to, or I didn't know anything about Chad Daybell or where he lived, or that he was so close. He was so, like, Lori's apartment was so close to where my daughter lived. It was so scary.
It is scary. And like somebody said, it could have been revenge for you going out with that guy. I'm sure Lori has a mental list of people that she wanted to get even with.
Yeah.
And again, let's always remember that Chad Daybell's kids were never dark. It was just Lori's kids, the two kids, that caused them problems. Tylee, because she knew the truth,
right,
and was probably a bit mouthy and didn't like Chad, and Chad didn't like her. And then with Tylee gone, who's going to take care of JJ? And what a great way to get even to Kay Woodcock, for taking her insurance money. So, oh God, it just, again, I could go on and on. I have so many questions that and we'll never get the answers to. And like you said, this is such a great comment, Megan. if they had a tinge of guilt, they would relieve themselves of it. If Chad Daybell felt the least bit guilty, he would have said, they'd say something. If Lori felt the least bit guilty,
Yeah.
And again, I don't want to get off on this topic, but I just worry about Melanie Pulowski. I worry that she still buys into her Aunt Lori and Chad dad, even though she says she doesn't. And we'll play some more of these interviews with Melanie. That's terrifying what she's telling the police about Brandon Boudreaux. Absolutely terrifying. And isn't there go ahead.
I wish they were going to call her. I really do.
I know. I don't understand why they're not. I don't understand. I don't get it.
I do know. I've talked to a couple of different prosecutors over different things, and I do know that there is a big consideration about a witness's credibility and what they may have said in other cases or what they may have said in the press. And they do have to be subject to cross-examination, although Lori's not the greatest at that, but it could impeach the witness in the eyes of the jury if her credibility was called into question, et cetera. So, yeah.
That's a very good point. See, I'm thinking selfishly because I just want to hear what she has to say.
Me too.
Yeah.
Well, and having Melanie and having Melanie Gibb and Zulema Pastenis on Lori's list of witnesses she wanted to call, but she couldn't even give a reason of why she would call or what relevance they would have. And I was like, ask me. I can tell you what relevance they would have. I could come up with from them.
I could come up with something very, I think, pretty dang strong. But, I don't want to give away everything or whatever the hell it was she said that was just crazy.
The whole defense, is that how this works? Yes, Lori.
Lori, that's exactly how it works. Marlene Clausen has a good question. We've talked about this before. Megan, do you think they had anything to do with the neighbor of Chad, his death? Now, his family, that neighbor, has come out very strongly. And they said to people, quit talking about it. He died of natural causes. I'm sorry. I don't believe it. I just don't. I think he was a test subject. And I base that on the fact that he died of the same thing Alex did. And he went to preparing the people with Chad. And, I don't believe he had any other issues before. But the family does not want to go there. So what is your thought, Megan?
I don't believe in coincidences.
Yeah.
And especially where this case is concerned, there are just too many things that are parallel between his death. I believe his name is Eldon Clausen.
Yes.
Between his death and Alex's death and the timing of it. So even if you just take those three things, no, I don't think that that's a coincidence at all. The thing that infuriates me is that we're never going to know, number one.
Right.
And there's no way that we could have known at the time that these things occurred that we needed to do more research, investigation, whatever. I mean, law enforcement only has to work with their little narrow thing that they have to work with on the day that they're there. And that's it. You get one window, you get one shot at it, that's it. So, hindsight being 2020, of course, we would appoint some special investigator to look into Joe's death, to look into Eldon Clausen's death, to anybody around these people that passed away during that time frame.
And think about it. How many people dropped dead around you? Not too many, I would think.
No.
I've had my father, I wasn't around him, but he dropped dead of a heart attack. And it was proven. Nobody else, though. I don't have anybody else, knock on wood, who keeps dropping dead. Lori and Chad, God, they were just this black mark of death wherever they went. It's not a coincidence. You're right. Yeah. Absolutely right. In the Garden says, Nate has the state's reply, and it's hilarious. I want to ask, how do they get this information so quickly? We have to go to the courthouse, and it takes us forever. Do you have any idea? Who do I need to pay? Who do I need to suck up to?
Well, I'll put you in touch with Joe Schmo because he's been helping me. But I know that there is some kind of list that you can subscribe to that will automatically send you the filings in a case that you're following.
Is that Vine?
I don't know. I don't know exactly. Somebody sent it to me and it's buried so deep in my inbox I can't even begin to think about digging it out. But you can also go to the docket, the court docket, and if you go every day and refresh,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I talked to him today, and it's quite the process to get them unless you go down there. You know, you don't get them at the same day, and it's and here's the thing: every courthouse is different. That's the frustrating thing. Well, we'll gladly promote Joe Schmo's channel and get subscribers to him if he could help us teach us his ways, teach us his wonderful ways.
Yeah,
So
I'm sure he'd love to help.
Anybody have any other questions? What the hell is your name, Stacy? Do you have any other questions? Sorry, I couldn't think of your name there for a second.
Not right now, except I would love to be in contact with Joe and see if and figure it out. That would be great.
Nate says
I've had so much problems with like Koberger. I signed into the docs. I get them easily, but Lori had issues. Yeah.
Nate said it costs $16. Hey, we'll pay the $16. We are happy to do it. And is there anything else that Megan that we have forgotten? Now we know tomorrow the electronic questionnaire goes out to the jurors, and then Friday the jurors come in for an actual interview, and then supposedly the case is going to start Monday, right?
Right. So tomorrow morning is when the prosecution and defense will get together to go through those electronic questionnaires, and they'll decide how many of those people get called for in-person voir dire. And then, so I think that will be televised. If I remember correctly, it was last time, that one day, not when the jurors are there in person, but when they're going through the electronic questionnaires. So it'll be interesting to me to see tomorrow if they have any court business like these filings that they're going to address before they start going through the jury questionnaires.
Right. And Lauren Matthias told me that that this is going to be the whole trial is going to be broadcast live stream, but it's going to be through the courthouse. So I guess you would just go to the American Courthouse YouTube channel and they'll have it posted there. One final question, which I think is a great question here from Teresa Day. Did Adam or Alex go on a mission?
I know that Adam served a mission, I think in South Carolina, I want to say, but I don't know if he stayed the whole time. I want to say, I think he came home early to get married. And Alex, I think that he did get called on a mission, go out for a short time, but I know that I'm fairly certain he got sent home early for getting a little too close with one of the ladies he was teaching.
Doesn't surprise me at all. But anyway, thank you. And yeah, I'd love to have Joe Schmo on, have you both on. All three of you and Kresha and Joe, that'd be fantastic. So anything we can do to help, generate more subscribers and get people more involved, because it's not just this case, everybody, that we're going to be talking about. We got lots of other cases to cover. And again, to me, it's all about learning the truth, trying to figure out why people do what they do, and then we can stop creating these monsters. Megan, Connor, anything else before we sign off for tonight?
I'm just grateful for you guys. I'm grateful for your community here. And, having been on a couple of other channels where it's not quite as friendly in the chat, I really do appreciate it. And thanks for everybody who's asking about my grandson. He's doing a lot better. And, so far, no news on any genetic issues. So he seems to be thriving and doing great.
That's wonderful.
I think I finally just now today feel like I've gotten my life sort of put back together after being gone for almost all of April. So I'm really grateful that I'm reporting here from my comfy chair.
from your couch, and that's where it should be.
Yeah, exactly.
Megan, Connor, thank you so much. We'll put the link to your channel and to Joe Schmo's channel and to Kresha's channel in our description as well. And if they are broadcasting live tomorrow, we are going to live stream that. So we'll have the chat open so you can come in here and chat. So Megan, we'll be in touch again, my dear. And if you need anything, you let us know, okay? Thank you so much.
Guys.
Thanks, everybody. And I want to thank the moderators, our wonderful moderators. Let's see, Lynn Jen 2, Yuda, also Four Sons Mom, Moonlight View, and Lisha Gallegos. Ladies, thank you so much. And of course, Stacy, thank you for everything that you do, okay? We'll be back here tomorrow, maybe sometime during the day, if the court is live streaming the start of the jury selection in the Lori Daybell case, in the case of conspiracy to commit murder against Brandon Boudreaux. Okay, we'll see you on the True Crime Discussion Forum, websleuths.com. We'll see you here tomorrow on Websleuths YouTube Live. Bye-bye.
Bye.